Times girl, aren't you? Okay, so Mia, you're here with us today as part of the Altered Eating team and also as a researcher. So I'm really excited to have time with you because there's loads of questions that I want to ask you. And the first question I want to ask you is a big one. If you had like 40 minutes in a room to change the world, how people see and understand diets and weight management, what kind of advice would you give those people?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm just as excited. I'm very nervous. I've never been interviewed before, and never, most definitely, never on my. I think I have been interviewed once before in high school, but never on what I've actually done my work on and my PhD on. So it feels sort of extra nervous, I guess. But a topic that I'm really passionate about and really keen to talk about. So, and a wonderful kind of question. There's so much to say about obesity that, and about weight management that it's very difficult probably to do it in 40 minutes. And I have, as they say in Blue Peter, prepared something earlier, and I've managed to condense it, maybe not to just kind of 5 or 6 things. And I guess the first thing I would have to start this with is I'd have to communicate to that person and to those people the complexity of the issue. Probably that's the hardest thing to explain and the hardest thing to convey, because so I think in one of the Blair governments created a sort of a map. They modeled obesity and they modeled, kind of respectively what management would look like if we understand it. And the model is so complex and so humongous that they say about it that it's not yet implemented. But to put it in very, very sort of lay words, it's so complex and so ginormous that you can't even view it on one document. Okay, when you view it on just one paper, it becomes hard to read, and so you have to expand it and sort of go in it like a map. And there's sort of all sorts of, it's right here before me. It's there's kind of parts from social psychology, parts from food production, parts from physiology, parts from individual psychology. There's physical activity and environment. There's all sorts of sort of factors, groups of factors that intertwine and interact. And so really that complexity is becoming to dawn on us in terms of the academic world and, potentially healthcare provision and stuff like that. Even with healthcare provisioners, they haven't yet quite, they theoretically know that it's very complex, but there's still these preconceptions that operate in their world that oversimplify it. And when it comes to kind of everyone, lay people who don't study this and don't do this for a living, it's even worse. There's this kind of idea that it's common sense, that it should be easy. You should just move more and eat less, and you should eat things in moderation and enjoy life, but eat things in moderation. And all of that is, there's no, that kind of complexity has not yet filtered through. It takes some time. Maybe just like in fashion or whatever, these beautiful designs eventually filter through in everyday things that we all wear. It's the same with ideas and with understanding. It has not yet filtered through. So that's probably one of the biggest things. And I have to say, my mother. So my mother is very. So I've studied this now. The bane of my life became my PhD, and I've studied it with a lot of interest and commitment. I think, and she can't help. But when we talk about it, I'll sometimes try and give her a bit of like a snapshot of what it's like and my lived experience, and she always tries to troubleshoot it for me. She goes, well, can you not just do this? And then I'll be like, well, not quite, because I am doing this, or well, you can just try this then maybe. So it's very it's very difficult to explain, but it's complex.
And I think especially I think for girls and women, all of us will have a story from our mothers. I mean, my mother had 13 pregnancies. Wow. 13. Wow. Eight surviving children. Okay. And she couldn't figure out why she was overweight.
Okay.
I mean, her body, I don't know. I mean, sadly, she died very young, but she was constantly on a diet.
Mm.
And her four daughters, none of us
Yeah.
have eating disorders, which, well, no, I probably do have an eating disorder. I cannot eat in moderation. But
Okay.
it's amazing that we haven't grown up with more severe
Yeah.
body issues than we did. It was a constant,
Yeah,
constant.
that's really interesting. I know what you mean about not being able to eat, and I'm not able to do it. But that's partly because, and we have a very idiocentric attribution. You know, when people are responsible and treat life responsibly for their health and for their anything, we always go, well, it must be me. It's because I can't eat in moderation. But moderation is a very, very vague thing. So
Subjective.
yeah, incredibly. What is moderation? So, if you had one donut a day or one good slice of cake a day, is that moderation? Because that's in terms of how much what else you eat that day is probably moderation, but it's actually
Are,
eating cake every single day of your life.
are there people who can eat just one donut?
And then there's those freaks.
Hey!
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, so yeah, I understand this. So the next thing that I would probably try and convey in a conversation with someone who can change the world with regards to obesity and weight management is that we should let people do their own thing. So this is something that I've particularly understood with working with the kind of the altered eating team and the researchers in this network and the concept altogether. So, for instance, so you should give people the tools to understand and do research because they need to kind of be able to be skeptical about what they see. But the kind of the sustainability, diet sustainability, is in the eye of the beholder. It's in the mouth of the beholder, and so you can't just say, "Well, eat this, eat blueberries and avocado, and you'll be fine," because you won't. I really don't like these two things. So yeah, let people do their own thing. And there's no evidence out there to say that particular eating plans are outperforming each other in terms of weight loss and weight management. The idea is that whatever it is, you should be able to kind of do it in the long run. It should be able to look as close as possible to the way that you would eat if you're not dieting. And there's another point that I'll come back to that in a moment because there's more to that, I guess, than just this. And then the other thing, so that's thing number 3, is kind of do away with guilt and shame and self-criticism and sort of belittling yourself, and also don't do it, obviously we know that, don't do it to other people, but don't do it to yourself, I guess, because in weight management we frequently hear people say things like, I have let myself down, or I'm self-sabotaging, this kind of psychobabble. And
I was being so good.
Yeah, as being so good, and then this happened, and then I've I've been ashamed of myself. It's just an awful thing, and that back to that complexity that we have. People don't quite understand. They look at weight management and dieting, and they go, it's all psychology. I've got it. It's just, you have to handle the psychology, and it's like, you are right, but actually there's more to that. There's also physiology, and that you don't attend to it. It happens kind of in your body and in your hormones, and you don't have much control over it, or limited control. And then it's everything else, the environment, etc. So it's not all psychology. So you should not. You should be careful. Guilt and shame and self-criticism are where madness lies.
No place at the table.
No, not at all. That's a really good thing. That's a really good
Have a look campaign here.
turn of phrase. Amazing. Okay, so then the next thing, thing number 4 that I came up with when I was thinking in my Blue Peter moment, was that it's a really good idea to try and advise people to decouple exercise and eating in a way that they're not. When you're being good, it's not that you're being good, you're eating well and exercising, but exercising is something that you do kind of for your health and for your mental well-being. Because when it comes to, and again, that's that sort of idea, the common sense idea that it's move more and eat less, is where we're sort of, again, we're fooled by that, because it's just so permeated in how we speak about dieting and obesity. Exercise has very little contribution to weight management. It has more contribution to weight maintenance. But I mean, I'm an exerciser. I'm someone who exercises quite a lot, and I'm struggling with weight management. So I'd probably I'd be very skeptical of that. Even so, outside of my personal experience, exercise is really, it has a small contribution to weight loss, but it has a huge contribution to feeling good, having the psychological resources to cope with weight management, because it's very resource demanding. It's costly, having to fail, and failure I'm putting in inverted commas, because it's you're not failing, it's a rigged game. But that perceived failure is very costly and stuff, and so it's important to counteract it with exercising and going out there and taking care of your heart, taking care of your muscles, get good muscles, strong muscles, and get your heart pumping. Be out, move, breathe the air, and or just do exercise indoors. Whatever it is, just do it, but don't necessarily pair it together with eating, because it shouldn't, because when things fall apart with eating, let's say, people tend to drop exercise because that's part of being good. So consider the rewards that you're getting from exercise that are unrelated to eating. So for instance, what I get from exercise, the thing that I love the most, and I'm really reluctant to let it go, is energy levels. And my energy levels are just completely, I'm a different person.
Same.
Yeah.
I've only recently been able to exercise again after being sick with COVID. So it's been a year since I used to do 60 to 80 miles a week on the bike and exercise every day. And it's a year since I've been able to do it. And in the last month, I've been able to cycle a tiny bit, but I've just been doing some weights inside and like a little bit of tiny bit of cardio. And the weight that I picked up, I mean, I've gone up probably 3 dress sizes.
That is amazing.
I got 3 since I got COVID. So and I really didn't recognize my body anymore. But the thing I found hardest was I had no physical strength. So I used to be able to pick 4 stone up, no problem. And then I would go to pick up something that was relatively light. And I was struggling, and my legs felt heavy, and I felt like I didn't own my body anymore. And it's still not the shape that I recognize at all, but I feel stronger, and I have some energy, and my lights feel like they're still blinking, but my lights feel on, which is so different. So you're really, really right about that exercise element. It's
Thank you. I really believe in that. And I mean, I guess other people's experiences may be different, and that is subject to an awful lot of individual differences. So I always say that, yes, that's the evidence base, but there's variability within, findings that they can differ from person to person. These things can be applicable in various, to various extents. So, So
for sure.
Then the other thing, I've got 2 more things, I think, on the Blue Peter list, is the kind of, so think about weight maintenance. So very frequently we're told, diets are bad because you can't do them forever, and you should be eating, and once you start eating regular stuff, you regain, and that's evidence that diets are bad. But that's a bit of again sort of maybe an oversimplification, or I don't know, there's some kind of miscommunication. it's fine to have one strategy to lose weight, but you can't maintain it. You can't live with that strategy long term, because no one should be losing weight continuously, indefinitely. So it's fine to have a sort of a more distinct weight loss versus a weight management time, and it's incredibly important to know what that will look like. And we're going back to the sustainability, perceived sustainability of your eating patterns, and what you like, and what you're able to, how you're able to maintain them, and what you, in terms of sort of sensory richness, what you're able to still take from your diet, but at the same time be able to maintain. And it's an art form, understanding yourself, understanding the strategy that you know. And I don't have it. I can very, very honestly say I'm struggling. I don't know the answers. I mean, I'm good at laying them out like this, but personally applying them is a completely different game, and I struggle more and sort of cyclically, more and less. And I have these stories about why I struggle, and that's all they are. They are stories. They're just narratives, and probably the truth is completely different and reflects that complexity that I spoke about, rather than my stories and my explanations that involve, oh yeah, I'm really eating like that because I'm taking the bus. And it's very, very tiring to take the bus, and I have to eat because I'm, that sort of thing. So,
Yeah, I get it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, so yeah, it's very important to think about how maintenance will, what it will look like, and when will it kick in, and just sort of be careful, not, because that's where sort of behavioral oscillations happen, things, you kind of go from restraint to kind of, free for all, bring the donuts, and that when you're kind of trapped in negative patterns. And then the last thing that I wanted to say, and I was going to keep it to 5, but I wanted to say, then I saw something amazing on Twitter. Even though Twitter is an awful place, it has its uses. You can keep up with people who are from your professional field, and that's what I tend to use it for. But someone said, be a B student, aim to be a B student, because perfectionism as a trait and as a behavior, it can be a very particularly toxic combination. It can make a toxic combination with dieting and with weight management. They can really sort of cause chaos on many things on your life. And so the idea is that if you aim to be a B student and then leave, so B students are good 80% of the time. They aim to be to perform well for 80%, and then 20% is there for life, for sensory experiences, for commensalities, for kind of for everything else. So that those are my 6 things.
They're rather impressive, and I think you could have an entire conference from these. But it's very positive to. It's like it all makes sense, and I really like that kind of thing of, look, let people figure out their own thing, let people be skeptical, let people do their own research. And I suppose, I've worked with a lot of people who were unwell for a variety of reasons, and I suppose for me the goal was always give people enough space to experience what it feels like to be well.
Yeah.
And what are you doing during that time? Because now I know the foods that if my body's ballooning, like can't remember the name of the fish, but if my body's doing that, I know you got to cut down on the carbs. You got to get rid of the white carbs. I know the things that don't agree with me now, and I know my body well enough through getting older, which is great. The foods I shouldn't eat, and the foods I can really enjoy, and I never feel like I have to sacrifice on my diet. When my body's working well, I can just eat what I want, and I eat what I enjoy.
Yeah,
and
it's very interesting what you say, and I agree with every bit of it. And just to add to it, I guess the bit, so there's many schools of thought. So the old school is we should ask people to lose weight because it's not good for them to be big, it's not good for their health, and things like that. And then there's the sort of more newer school of thought is well, actually you can be healthy even if you're bigger, and we shouldn't ask people to lose weight, and this is awful, and it stigmatizes them, it does more harm than good. And they also have a point. Both of these schools of thought have a point, but I think that I think ultimately we should be empowering people to make their own choices, and it's very hard. While I agree maybe we shouldn't tell people to lose weight, but does that mean that we should actively be preventing them from losing weight? I think not. I think people should be empowered to do whatever they need for their body and whatever they require. And there are huge benefits with weight loss socially. It's a really awful thing to say, I know, but you just there's huge social benefits. Sadly, especially for women, some of our societal value is derived from the way that we look. And so in terms of getting jobs and going after the jobs that you want, and even things like income, they're linked to this thing. And it's and it's really hard, and you won't to say that it's awful is one thing, and I agree with that, but that's how our society is, and that's how our species are. I think it runs deeper than a social influence. I think it runs this real powerful evolutionary demands. So when I'd like to be thinner, I'd like to be smaller. And no matter what beautiful feminist argument that you throw at this, it could be wonderful. It could be something that liberates you for just about 3 seconds. No matter what beautiful rational argument you throw at that desire to be thinner, it reappears. It's hardly even touched by these beautiful, complex feminist arguments. And this is why I feel that it runs a lot deeper than societal pressures. There's maybe evolutionary pressures to be attractive, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, which kind of leads me to, it's interesting when you kind of think about the kind of research and thinking about these things. What's the best research that you've read in this area? What's the kind of
because of that humongous complexity, and because this field has been really well researched, the bits that I like are now the things that bring things together, the things that now start to make sense of this whole complexity. So there isn't one study that I can say it's like, well, I like these ones about motivation, or I like these ones about self-regulation, or I like the studies about habit and things like that, because this is just like a puzzle, a piece of the puzzle. And so focusing on that, you need to zoom out now. You need to zoom out and make sense of the whole picture, of the whole research. So the things that I like are around 20 years ago, there was a start, and that's kind of what made me use the altered eating framework. There was people started to call for holistic interventions for weight management, ones that look at emotions and culture and the social side and the behavioral side and the cognitive side. This kind of really an environmentally sort of intervening environmentally. So those are the bits. So there's someone who's got nursing background. I think she's called Sue Popkes-Voter. That's the first bit of research that I've read that calls for this holistic approach. And also I really there's a fantastic study by someone called Krista Casaza and colleagues from 2013. And she looks at the myths, these kind of pervasive myths that are out there. And she kind of looks for the basis of conjecture and why are they so persistent and why are they there, and sort of dispels them. So, and things like, I've got it right here, and you probably have so things like one of the things is that small sustained changes in energy intake or expenditure, doing something little every day is the answer. That's one of the myths, and there's plenty of those that we kind of somewhere we kind of one of these we find ourselves believing. Other myths are less believable. Like, for instance, a bout of sexual activity burns 100 to 300 calories for each person involved. Now, that's hard to believe, but there's other ones that are really kind of like insidious. So, yeah. Sorry, I've lost you. You're gone.
That some of those myths would depend very much on the people involved.
And the sexual activity involved. I think that I mean, I can probably think of ways to burn more or less, but yes.
Yeah.
It's things that kind of pull things together that are kind of very interesting to me.
And I wonder as well, it's like when I talk to people my age, so I'll be 46 this year, and my mother was in her teens in like the 60s and very involved in fashion and clothes, and for her and her friends there was just this, like, it was just unthinkable that you would be fat.
Yeah.
Unthinkable that you'd be overweight. And she was bigger built than me, and she tried to tell me that on her wedding day she was able to put her hands around her waist and they touch. I was like, not a chance. But it's like, I'm glad that that's the thing that you want to create as a bit of a legend of yourself when you were young. But it's like, I know the size she was, and unless she was corseted by, I don't know, it just wouldn't have happened. But that was the thing. That was the goal, that you could make yourself that small where your vital organs are. Like, So, I mean, I know growing up with that kind of pressure of you will be fat and nobody will want you.
Yeah.
And I remember just being like, that really doesn't bother me very much at all. It's like, it just seemed like the worst thing.
Yeah, I totally get this. My God, I really can relate to that. My mother was the opposite. So my mother didn't care, and she brought me when I was young. She brought me up with this kind of. I don't think it was intentional, but she never particularly encouraged girliness. She just brought me in this gender neutral way, and didn't particularly encourage frills and laces and stuff like that. And she was never concerned.
We should swap mothers.
But you know what? I just wanted to say it's amazing, because you would have thought that maybe I wouldn't care about weight, but I really, really do. And in addition to that, my mother also does. But it runs again on a really deeper level, and so she cares about weight. That wasn't conveyed to me explicitly. I didn't see her dieting. I never saw anyone dieting growing up, yet I was she is someone who she clearly cares about presenting yourself well, etc. And I think, because I grew up in Bulgaria, I think which was a country that's economically not performing well, etc. I think that has a lot, and it has a lot to do with that, because I don't want to say something that's an incorrect generalization, but in a country where there's scarcity of resources, women's looks are and women are encouraged to access resources with their looks, and it's a very kind of subtle thing, but and women's value is more intrinsically linked to their looks, and so that was just something that has been embedded in me, in how I think and stuff like that. So
it's a very similar experience growing up, and it's some of the things that adults would say to young girls. It's like, you've no idea how wrong and how damaging that is. It's
we didn't know better, maybe.
We're learning. So with that kind of learning, and with how pervasive and complicated all of these issues are, I mean, you've given a really good kind of breadth of that. This is every single thing in your life that can be affected by this. And I kind of feel like we understand cancer better than we understand weight management. How how do you think something like the Altered Eating Mighty Network could play a formative role in supporting people experiencing weight management issues, those kind of supporting them, that kind of whole arena? What kind of role do you think it could play?
I'm still working it out, and I think that's going to be we need to consider it, and we need to think it through very carefully. I always hope that this is going to be a positive role, and I think that the best thing we could hope, and I think it's probably very ambitious to say we're going to go and make a difference and have any meaningful difference, but for the people who engage with us, if we can convey all of this to them, if we can reduce their self-blaming, their self-criticism, their sense of failure and things like that, if we can only do that for just even individual people, and we can, again, using this approach, this altered eating approach, help them understand just how complex weight management and obesity are, then potentially that's more than we could ever hope for. And I think that the bit that we do is this approach looks to paint a complex picture, to convey that complexity. And that's important, because the bit that's really important to me is that you have to, in order to be compassionate to yourself, you also have to be intellectually honest. And frequently out there, when it comes to body image, and when it comes to body positivity, there's this kind of idea that goes, well, we're all beautiful, and we're just all wonderful. We're beautiful, and that I don't think is I think that beauty is a very narrow concept, very constrained concept, and that's what makes it, I guess, desirable, and other things about it. But I think that it's ultimately, campaigns like that are bound to be not successful because they're not honest. I guess what we need to be talking about is beauty and attractiveness are just one little thing, and there's so much more to life than beauty and attractiveness. And if you spend your life focused on thinness and beauty, you will just miss on so much more beyond that. And I think telling people that we're all beautiful is just it's dishonest. There's variations in beauty, and there's it's just one of those awful things. It's not a fair thing. I do understand where that kind of line of thinking comes from, but it's bound to be there's insincerity in it, and so you ultimately, I think, if you want to be compassionate, you have to, with weight management in particular, this explains the complexity. And so this is how guilt and sense of failure are reduced. And if we take away the focus away from beauty and sort of these ideals, and say, go be, losing, there's a really nice meme, losing weight is not your life's purpose. Go do all these other things. Do your best with your body, for yourself, for your health, and feed your body nice things and beautiful, tasty things. But don't obsess over weight. Don't obsess over beauty,
It's so important, because I remember it was one of the last times that I travelled home to Ireland to see my mum when she was dying of cancer. And I walked into a local shop to buy some clothes because I didn't have a chance to pack. It was a rush trip. And my mum had only been sick for 7 months, and I went from almost 10 stone weight to 8 stone, which is, and a stone and a half less than I should be at any point. And I walked into a shop, and the woman there had known me since I was a kid. And I walked in, and I looked sick. And she said, "Oh God, oh, you look amazing."
Oh, wow.
I was like, amazing. Yeah. My bones were sticking out.
It's absolutely scary how, the kind of the thinness that is out there, that I have no doubt that she meant it. That's the other thing. I have no doubt she meant it, because, there's this idea that, so in kind of Renaissance times, being sort of more bigger was considered beautiful because it was related to health. And I think that the evolutionary explanation is that now thinness in the current circumstances is a sign of health. And so I have no doubt that she meant it because she saw thinness and she saw, wow, this looks good. It's scary how much thinness how attractive we find kind of thin, bony bodies. Sorry, I don't know. I shouldn't be saying it's scary. It's just I can't help but think there was an amazing piece written by this journalist woman in somewhere, I don't know where I read it, but she got I believe it's tapeworm is the parasite that grows all the way in your intestine. It's really, really long, and it sort of eventually grows the size of your intestine, like a lower intestine or something. And it's you lose a significant amount of weight. You become malnourished because it sort of eats. It sort of sits there quietly, and it depletes you of nutrition, like nutritional elements and stuff. And she didn't realize that she'd gotten this parasite and for a very long time was losing weight, and she talked about how scary it was, the amount of male attention that she got with that weight loss. And so this is what I mean by, I've no doubt that this is very much valued and attractive.
It's just, you're right, it is scary. So I think because these things are so complex and ingrained, I think it is difficult to affect change, but creating spaces where people can, talk about what's happened to them, seek out some of that good evidence base, find out more about your research, and get to meet you in the group was an amazing, great place to start. And I think you're a touch point that will be a really important point for a lot of people along their journey. So amazing work talking to you. It's been I'd say it often, but it's most definitely been an education today.
Well, it's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed talking about it, and I think that I often sort of I can talk about it forever, which in a way is good, but in a way I wish I had the brain space for other things as well. So yes, it's a funny one.
That will come.
Yeah.
Right. Just before you go, if you hit stop record on that for me.
And no, stop recording.